A galaxy once silenced by fear suddenly began to sing, and no one understood why the song felt human. They said no mortal could steady the mind of a battle-scarred alien, yet a quiet librarian did it with nothing but presence. And if you're wondering how something that impossible even begins, stay with me. Tell me where you're watching from. Subscribe to help this story reach more galaxies. And let's begin. The abyssal library smelled like forgotten time. Elias Dorn had grown used to it over the past 6 months. Dust, old parchment, and something else he could never quite name. Metal, maybe. Or grief preserved in amber light. He adjusted his cataloging tablet and moved deeper into the subterranean wing, where most archivists refused to work alone. The other librarians said the place was haunted. They said lights flickered when no one was near, that shelves hummed with voices that had no source. Elias thought they were just dramatic. He preferred it down here. Quiet. No one mocking him for the way he paused when handling certain artifacts, tilting his head like he could hear something in them. No one rolling their eyes when he insisted some objects felt warm or sad or angry. The senior librarian, Tarvin, had laughed at him yesterday. Objects don't have feelings, Dorn. They're things. You're wasting time listening to metal. Elias had said nothing, but he knew what he heard. Tonight's task was simple. Catalog a pile of unclaimed artifacts left in the east corner. Forgotten donations, items with no records. The kind of work no one else wanted. He crouched beside a stack of cloth-wrapped bundles and started unwrapping them one by one. A ceremonial blade, a star chart etched in crystal, a set of prayer beads that clicked softly in his palm. Then he saw it. Half buried beneath a stack of star maps was something circular. Metal, intricate, a crown. Elias carefully pulled it free. It was heavier than it looked, made of a dark alloy that seemed to drink the light around it. Engravings covered every surface, symbols he didn't recognize, flowing like frozen sound waves. Beautiful. He turned it over in his hands, and that's when he heard it. A note, distant, faint, like someone singing through water. It wasn't a happy sound. It was the kind of sound that made his chest tighten, the kind that felt like loneliness crystallized into frequency. He'd never heard an object sing quite like this before, not with this much pain. Elias frowned and ran his thumb along one of the engravings. The note grew louder, and then it shattered into a scream. "Drop it!" The voice came from behind him, low, hoarse, desperate. Elias spun around, still holding the crown. A figure stood at the edge of the lamplight, tall, draped in a long dark cloak that hid most of her frame. But he could see her face now, half-shadowed, half-illuminated. Scars, thin lines running across her temples, more along her jaw. Her eyes were sharp, pale, and utterly exhausted. She looked like someone who had been holding something too heavy for too long. "I said drop it," she repeated, quieter this time, but no less intense. Elias didn't move. He glanced down at the crown, then back at her. "Is this yours?" he asked. She flinched, like the question had struck her physically. "It was," she said. "Once." Her voice carried an accent he couldn't place, elegant, clipped, the kind of voice that had once commanded armies, maybe. Now it just sounded tired. Elias looked at the crown again. The engravings seemed to pulse faintly under his fingers, responding to something. To her, maybe. "I think," he said carefully, "you should take it back." He held it out toward her with both hands. The woman stared at him like he'd just spoken in a dead language. "You don't know what that is," she said. "No," Elias admitted. "But I know it's singing, and it sounds sad." For a long moment, she didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, her pale eyes locked on the crown, her shoulders rigid. Then slowly, she stepped forward. The light caught her fully now. She was striking in a way that had nothing to do with beauty and everything to do with presence. Tall, angular, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a loose knot. Her hands were scarred, too. Old burns, maybe. Battle wounds. She stopped just in front of him. Elias kept holding the crown out, "You're not afraid," she said. It wasn't a question. It was an observation, confused, almost suspicious. "Should I be?" Elias asked. She stared at him for another beat. Then, without answering, she turned and walked back into the shadows. The crown remained in his hands, but as she disappeared, the lights above flickered. Once, twice, and somewhere deep in the library something groaned. Elias stood there, alone again, holding a crown that sang of grief. And for the first time since he'd started working here, he wondered if maybe the other archivists were right. Maybe this place was haunted after all. Elias didn't sleep that night. He kept thinking about the woman, about the scars, about the way she'd looked at the crown like it was both precious and poisonous, about the way she'd walked away without taking it. When he returned to the library the next evening, he brought the crown with him. He'd wrapped it carefully in cloth and tucked it into his satchel, ignoring the way it hummed faintly against his hip the entire walk there. Tarvin intercepted him at the entrance. "You're late," the senior librarian said, not looking up from his datapad. "Subterranean wing needs organizing. Again. Apparently someone left artifacts scattered everywhere last night." Elias felt his face heat. "Sorry. I was cataloging and... Just go fix it." Tarvin waved him off. "And stay out of the eastern alcoves. We've had reports of... disturbances. Disturbances. Lights. Sounds. The usual nonsense people claim when they don't want to work down there." Tarvin finally looked at him, eyes narrowed. "You didn't see anything strange last night, did you?" Elias thought of pale eyes and a voice that said, "Drop it like a command and a prayer all at once." "No," he lied. "Nothing strange." Tarvin grunted and returned to his datapad. Elias descended into the subterranean wing. The crown grew warmer in his satchel with every step down. When he reached the bottom, he paused. The eastern alcove was just ahead, shrouded in shadow despite the glow lamps scattered along the walls. He could see the pile of artifacts he'd been cataloging last night, still scattered where he'd left them. But something was different. Someone was sitting there. The woman. She was perched on the edge of a stone bench, half hidden behind a column, her cloak pulled tight around her shoulders. Her head was bowed, and for a moment Elias thought she might be asleep. Then she spoke, without looking up. "You came back." Her voice was softer than last night, less desperate, but no less weary. "I work here," Elias said, "and yet you brought it with you." She finally lifted her head, and those pale eyes locked onto his satchel. "I can hear it." Elias carefully pulled the wrapped crown from his bag. "You left without it." "I know." "Why?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she rose from the bench and moved closer, her steps slow, deliberate. Up close, Elias could see more details. The scars weren't just on her face. They ran down her neck, disappearing beneath her collar. Her hands, when she folded them in front of her, bore burns that looked old but deep. "Because," she said quietly, "no one has ever offered it to me before. They take it. They demand I wear it. They use it as proof that I belong to them." Elias held it out again, just like he had last night. "I'm not taking it," he said. "I'm giving it back." She stared at the crown, and something in her expression cracked. Just for a second. A flash of pain so raw it made Elias's chest ache. "You don't understand what you're holding," she whispered. "Then tell me." Her jaw tightened. "It's called a wave crown. It amplifies emotion, turns feeling into force. In the wrong hands, it can shatter ships, level cities. In my hands." She trailed off, her gaze distant. "In my hands, it used to be a weapon." "Used to be? I haven't worn it in years." She looked at him now, really looked at him, like she was trying to figure out why he wasn't running. "Because the last time I did, people died. People I loved." Elias didn't lower the crown. "And you think that makes it not yours anymore?" "I think," she said, her voice trembling now, That I don't deserve to wear it. That's not what I asked. She blinked. Something in her posture shifted just slightly, like a wall beginning to crack. Who are you? She asked. Elias Dorn. I'm an archivist. Intern, technically. He tried a small smile. Not very important. And yet you're holding one of the most dangerous artifacts in the galaxy like it's a book you're returning. Is it dangerous right now? She hesitated. No, it's dormant. It hasn't been active since She stopped herself. Since you stopped wearing it, Elias finished gently. She nodded, and for the first time he saw her shoulders sag, just a little. Like she'd been holding herself upright through sheer will and was finally running out of strength. I don't know what to do with it, she admitted. I can't wear it. I can't destroy it. And I can't let anyone else take it. So you hid it here. He hid myself here, she corrected. The crown just followed. Elias looked down at the artifact in his hands. It wasn't humming anymore. It was quiet. Waiting. What's your name? He asked. She was silent for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. Then, quietly, Arvana. Arvana, Elias repeated. He carefully set the crown down on the bench between them.
I'm not going to make you take it, but I'm also not going to let it sit in a pile of forgotten things. It deserves better than that. He paused. And so do you. Arvana stared at him like he'd just said something in a language she'd forgotten how to speak. You don't know me, she said. No, Elias agreed. But I know that crown was singing yesterday, and it stopped when you showed up.
That means something. Before she could respond, the lights overhead flickered. Then the ground shook. Elias stumbled, catching himself against the column. Arvana didn't move, but her eyes went wide. The crown on the bench began to glow, faint at first, then brighter. No, she breathed. No, no, no. The shaking intensified. Books tumbled from shelves, glow lamps shattered, and somewhere deep in the library, something roared. Not a beast, a sound. What's happening? Elias shouted over the noise. Arvana's hands were trembling now, pressed against her temples. It's waking up! The library! It responds to... She gasped, her knees buckling. Elias caught her before she fell, and the moment his hands touched her arms, the shaking stopped. The roar faded. The crown's glow dimmed. Silence. Arvana looked up at him, her eyes wide with something that might have been terror or wonder or both. What did you do? She whispered. I don't know, Elias said honestly. But deep in the walls of the abyssal library, something had just woken up, and it was listening. For 3 days, Arvana didn't come back. Elias tried not to think about it. He catalogued artifacts, organized shelves, and avoided Tarvin's increasingly suspicious glances. The crown sat in a locked drawer in the archive office, wrapped in cloth, silent. But the library wasn't silent. It hummed now. A low, constant vibration that Elias could feel in his bones whenever he descended to the subterranean levels. None of the other archivists seemed to notice, but Elias heard it clearly. The walls were singing. On the 4th day, he found her waiting at his desk. She was sitting in the chair across from his workstation, hands folded in her lap, staring at nothing. When he approached, she didn't look up. I need to understand, she said quietly. Why it stopped when you touched me. Elias set down his satchel. I was hoping you could tell me. I can't. Her fingers tightened against each other. The wave crown responds to emotion, fear, rage, grief. It amplifies them, turns them into force. She finally looked at him. But when you touched me, it didn't amplify anything. It just stopped. Maybe it knew I wasn't afraid. Everyone is afraid of me, Arvana said flatly. I'm not everyone. She studied him for a long moment, like she was trying to solve an equation that didn't make sense. Then, without another word, she stood and walked away. But the next day, she was back. And the day after that, she never stayed long. Sometimes she sat in silence while Elias worked. Sometimes she watched him catalog artifacts, her pale eyes tracking his movements with an intensity that should have been unsettling but wasn't. He started bringing 2 cups of coffee. On the 7th day, Tarvin confronted him. "Who is she?" the senior librarian demanded, cornering Elias in the main archive hall. "A visitor," Elias said carefully. "A visitor who sits in the subterranean wing for hours every day? Who doesn't check in at the front desk? Who makes the other archivists nervous?" Tarvin leaned closer. "I've had 3 complaints this week, Dorn. People saying they've seen someone lurking in the restricted sections, someone who shouldn't be there. She's not hurting anyone. That's not the point. We have protocols. Security. If she wants access to the archives, she needs to register like everyone else." Tarvin's eyes narrowed. "Unless there's a reason she can't register, is she hiding from something?" Elias kept his expression neutral. "She just likes the quiet. Then she can like it somewhere else. Tell her to leave, or I will." That evening, Elias brought 2 cups of coffee and an old data archive tablet. Arvana was already there, sitting in her usual spot. She took the coffee without comment, wrapping her scarred hands around the cup like it was a lifeline. "I need to ask you something," Elias said, settling into his chair. "Ask. Tarvin wants to know who you are, officially, for the records." Arvana went very still. "I see. I didn't tell him anything, but he's going to push, and if I don't give him something, he'll make you leave." Elias hesitated. "I don't want that to happen." "Why not?" The question was so blunt it caught him off guard. "Because," Elias said slowly, "I think you need this place, and I think this place needs you. That doesn't make sense. Neither does a library that hums when you're here and stays quiet when you're not." He pulled up the archive tablet. "I did some research. Wave crowns aren't common. There's only been a handful made in recorded history. And most of them belonged to—" He trailed off, staring at the screen. "To empresses," Arvana finished quietly. "Warrior queens, leaders who commanded through resonance." Elias looked up at her. Really looked at her. "Arvana Kael'thir," he said. It wasn't a question. She didn't confirm or deny it. She just took another sip of coffee. "The Empress General who disappeared 15 years ago after the Outer Rim conflicts," Elias continued, reading from the tablet. "Rumored to have gone mad. Others say she lost control of her abilities and—" He stopped. "They say a lot of things. They always do. But you didn't go mad." "No." Her voice was barely audible. "I just broke." Elias set the tablet down. "What happened?" For a long time she didn't answer. Then, so quietly he almost missed it. "I lost my sister. And then I lost myself." The library hummed. The lights flickered. Arvana's hands trembled around the coffee cup. "You don't have to talk about it," Elias said gently. "I know." She looked at him, and there was something raw in her eyes. Something that hadn't been there before. "But you're the first person in 15 years who asked. Do you want to talk about what hurt you?" The words came out before he could stop them. Soft, earnest. The library shuddered. Books rattled on shelves. The walls groaned. Arvana gasped, pressing a hand to her chest like she'd been struck. "I'm sorry," Elias said quickly. "I didn't mean to." "No." She held up a hand, stopping him. "It's not you. It's—" She looked around at the vibrating shelves, at the flickering lights. "It's the library. It responds when I feel too much." "Then maybe you should feel it somewhere safer." "There is nowhere safer than this?" Her voice cracked. "Everywhere else, people expect me to be strong, to be the Empress, to be the weapon I used to be." She met his eyes. "But here, with you I don't have to be anything." The shaking slowed. The lights steadied. Elias realized, with a start, that his presence was calming her, calming the library, calming whatever storm raged inside her. "You can stay as long as you need," he said. Arvana's expression crumbled just for a second before she pulled it back together. "Thank you," she whispered. 3 levels above them, in the administrative wing, Tarvin was making a call. "Yes, I'm certain," he said into the comm. "She matches the description. Silver hair, facial scars, approximately 2 meters tall." He paused. "I know what you're thinking, but I'm telling you she's here, the Empress, and she's been spending time with one of my archivists." There was a long silence on the other end. Then, "The High Council will be informed. Do not approach her. Do not let her leave. We're sending a retrieval team." Tarvin ended the call, his hands shaking slightly. He'd just reported the location of the most dangerous woman in the galaxy, and he had no idea what he'd just set in motion. The next day, Arvana arrived before Elias did. She was standing in front of a shelf of historical texts, running her fingers along the spines without actually pulling any out. When she heard his footsteps, she didn't turn around. "I was 23 when they gave me the crown," she said. Elias stopped a few feet behind her, not wanting to break whatever spell had made her willing to talk. "Too young," she continued. "But my sister had just been killed in a skirmish near the outer colonies, and the Council needed a symbol, someone who could unite the scattered forces, someone who could turn grief into something useful." Her hand stilled on a book. "They chose me because I could scream loud enough to shatter steel. The wave crown amplified that." "Yes." She pulled out a book, a military history text, and opened it without reading. At first it was glorious. I could feel every soldier under my command, their fear, their courage, their love for each other. I could weave it all together into something unstoppable. We won battles we had no right to win. We saved worlds that should have fallen. Elias took a cautious step closer. "What changed?" "I did." She closed the book with a soft thud. "The more I used the crown, the more I felt everything, not just my soldiers, everyone. Every planet we liberated, every enemy we destroyed. All that pain, all that loss, all that joy and terror and love, it all became mine to carry." She turned to face him finally, and Elias saw something in her eyes he hadn't seen before. Not just weariness, depth, an ocean of feeling held back by sheer force of will. "After 10 years, I started hearing echoes," she said. "Voices of people who died in battles I'd commanded. They weren't really there, I knew that. But the crown made their emotions so real that I couldn't tell the difference between memory and presence." "That sounds like torture." "It was." Her voice went flat. "And then my own guard decided I was a liability. They said I was unstable, that I might turn the crown against our own people. So they came for me, in the night, in my own chamber." Elias's chest tightened. "They tried to kill you. They succeeded in killing who I was." She touched the scar on her temple. "This one was from my second in command. Someone I'd trusted with my life. Someone I'd called friend. I'm sorry. Don't be. I survived. I took off the crown, and I ran. I let them think I'd gone mad. Let them think I'd lost control. It was easier than admitting the truth, which was that I'd broken under the weight of being strong." The library hummed softly around them. Not violent this time, not chaotic. It sounded almost like approval. Elias moved to stand beside her. "For what it's worth, I don't think you're broken." Arvana let out a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. "You don't know me well enough to say that." "Maybe not, but I know you've been coming here every day for a week. You could have stayed hidden anywhere in the galaxy, but you chose this place. That doesn't sound like someone who's given up." "This place is quiet." "No, it's not," Elias said gently. "It hums when you're here. It responds to you. You can feel it, can't you?" She nodded slowly. The Abyssal Library is built on echo-amplifying stone. It's why it's so effective for storing historical recordings. But it also means, she trailed off. It means your emotions resonate here. Yes, usually that would be dangerous, but with you. She looked at him, really looked at him. It doesn't feel dangerous. It feels like the library is trying to tell me something. What? That maybe I'm not as alone as I thought. The admission hung between them, fragile and honest. Elias cleared his throat. I brought extra coffee today. The good stuff from the human quarter. Thought you might like to try something that doesn't taste like archived paper. Arvana blinked at the sudden shift in tone. Then, incredibly, she smiled. It was small, barely there, but real. Is this another human ritual? She asked. Kind of. We call it a coffee break. It's when you stop working and just exist for a minute. Exist, she repeated like the word was foreign. Yeah, no expectations, no duties, just two people having a drink. She considered this. I don't remember the last time I did something without expectation. Then it's overdue. He pulled out 2 insulated cups from his bag and handed her one. She took it carefully, like it might explode. It's called a cappuccino, Elias explained. Espresso with steamed milk, little bit of foam on top, human comfort drink. Arvana took a cautious sip. Her eyebrows rose slightly. It's, sweet. I added sugar. Figured you could use it. Because I'm bitter enough already? Elias nearly choked on his own coffee. Did you just make a joke? I don't know, did I? But there was something lighter in her voice now, something that hadn't been there before. They stood there in the quiet archive, drinking coffee, and for the first time in 15 years, Arvana felt something other than weight. She felt, maybe, almost, okay. Above them, the library hummed in harmony. The moment shattered when the door at the top of the stairs slammed open. Heavy boots on stone steps. Multiple sets. Arvana's cup slipped from her hands, shattering on the floor. No, she breathed. A figure emerged from the stairwell. Tall, armored, face hidden behind a ceremonial mask marked with the insignia of the Imperial Guard, the same insignia that had been on the blade that had given Arvana her scars. Empress Kael'thir, the guard said, voice distorted by the mask. The High Council requests your immediate return. Arvana took a step back, then another. Her breathing was coming faster now, her hands starting to shake. The library began to hum. Louder this time. Dangerous. I'm not going back, she said, her voice barely steady. That wasn't a request. The guard took a step forward. Elias moved between them. He was shorter than the guard by at least half a meter, slimmer by twice as much, completely unarmed, but he didn't move. She said no, Elias said quietly. The guard tilted their head. And you are someone who's not going to let you take her. The library walls began to shake, books tumbled from shelves, and somewhere deep below something very old started to wake up. The guard stared at Elias like he'd just stepped in front of a moving freight train. Move aside, civilian. No. Behind him, Arvana made a sound of protest. Elias, don't. She doesn't want to go, Elias said, keeping his eyes on the guard. His heart was hammering so hard he could hear it in his ears, but he forced his voice to stay level. And unless you're planning to drag her out of here by force, I suggest you leave. The guard took another step forward. You don't understand the situation. I understand that she's terrified. I understand that she's been living in hiding for 15 years because people she trusted tried to kill her. And I understand that you showing up here in full combat gear isn't exactly reassuring. Elias crossed his arms. So yeah, I think I understand the situation pretty well. The Empress belongs with her people. The Empress, Elias said carefully, belongs wherever she chooses to be. The library shook harder, cracks spider-webbed across the ceiling. Glow lamps burst in showers of sparks. The guard glanced up, then back at Arvana. "You need to control this." "I can't," Arvana said, and there was desperation in her voice. "I haven't worn the crown in years. I don't have control anymore. That's why I left." "Then the council will provide control." "The council," Elias cut in, "doesn't own her. She's not property. She's not a weapon. She's a person who asked to be left alone." "And you think you have the authority to speak for her?" "I think," Elias said quietly, "she doesn't need anyone's permission to exist." The words hung in the air. The shaking stopped. Everything went silent. Even the guard seemed taken aback. Behind him, Elias heard Arvana take a shaky breath. He didn't turn around, didn't take his eyes off the guard, but he could feel her shock radiating like heat. "You're making a mistake," the guard said finally. "Maybe. But it's my mistake to make." For a long moment, the guard just stood there. Then, slowly, they reached up and removed their helmet. The face beneath was scarred, weathered, but unmistakably familiar. One of the faces from the historical text Elias had pulled up, a former member of Arvana's personal guard, the one who'd given her the scar on her temple. Arvana made a sound like she'd been punched. The former guard's expression was carefully neutral. "The High Council will not accept this. They want her back, and they'll send more than just me next time." Then let them try," Elias said. The guard looked past him to Arvana. "I didn't come here to hurt you. I came because they ordered me to, but I see." They paused. "I see that maybe I was wrong, all those years ago." Arvana's voice was barely audible. "You tried to kill me." "I tried to stop what I thought was a threat. I was wrong." The guard put their helmet back on. "But the council won't see it that way. They'll keep coming, and next time, they won't just ask." They turned and walked back toward the stairs. Elias finally allowed himself to breathe. Behind him, Arvana's knees gave out. He spun around and caught her before she hit the ground, easing her down to sit against a bookshelf. Her whole body was trembling. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. "Yes, I did." "Why?" "Because," Elias said, crouching in front of her, "no one else was going to." Tears welled in her eyes. "You don't understand what you've done. They'll come for me, and they'll hurt you for getting in the way. Let them try. You're just a librarian, and you're just a person who needed someone to stand up for her." He smiled slightly. "Seems like a fair trade." She stared at him, and something in her expression cracked. Not in a breaking way, in an opening way. "I don't deserve this," she said. "That's not for you to decide." Before either of them could say anything else, voices echoed down the stairwell. More footsteps, but these were lighter, familiar. 3 other archivists appeared at the top of the stairs, led by a young woman named Kessa who worked the upper archives. "We heard shouting," Kessa said, slightly out of breath. "And Tarvin's been acting weird all day. Are you okay?" Elias helped Arvana to her feet. "We're fine. Just had an unwelcome visitor." "The one in the guard armor?" Kessa looked between them. "We saw them leave. They looked pissed." Her eyes landed on Arvana. "You're the one everyone's been talking about, aren't you? The ghost in the archives?" Arvana tensed. "She's not a ghost," Elias said firmly. "She's a scholar, like us." Kessa studied Arvana for a long moment. Then she shrugged. "Works for me. Anyone who makes Tarvin nervous is all right in my book." She glanced at the other 2 archivists, who nodded in agreement. "If anyone else comes looking for trouble, we've got your back." "Why?" Arvana asked, genuinely confused. "Because Elias vouched for you, and Elias doesn't vouch for people unless they're worth it." Kessa smiled. "Plus, the library likes you. We can all hear it humming now. That's got to mean something." The 3 archivists headed back up the stairs, leaving Elias and Arvana alone again. "You have friends," Arvana said softly. "Apparently." She looked at him, and for the first time since he'd met her, there was something close to hope in her eyes. "Thank you," she said. Elias shook his head. "You don't have to." She reached out and took his hand. The moment their fingers touched, the library flared with light. Not the harsh, chaotic light from before. This was warm, golden, harmonious. The walls sang, a perfect note that echoed through every corridor, every shelf, every stone. Elias stared at their joined hands, then up at Arvana's face. She looked just as stunned as he felt. "What?" he started. "I don't know," she breathed. "But it feels like the library is singing approval." "For what?" "For this." She squeezed his hand gently. "For us." The light slowly faded, but the warmth remained. And for the first time in 15 years, Arvana felt like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't completely alone anymore. 2 days later, an official notice arrived at the Abyssal Library. Tarvin delivered it personally, his hands shaking as he handed Elias the sealed document. "I'm sorry," the senior librarian said quietly. "I didn't know this would happen." Elias broke the seal and read the contents. His blood went cold. By order of the High Council of Irmora 7, Elias Dorn was to cease all contact with the individual known as Arvana Kael'thir immediately. Failure to comply would result in permanent expulsion from the planet. He had 24 hours to decide. Elias didn't tell Arvana about the notice, not immediately. Instead, he spent the night in the deepest archives, pulling every record he could find about the Outer Rim conflicts, about the Empress General Arvana Kael'thir, about the circumstances of her disappearance. The official histories painted a clear picture: unstable leader, dangerous abilities, necessary removal for public safety. But Elias had learned, in his years working with artifacts and ancient texts, that official histories often left out the most important parts. So he dug deeper. He found classified military reports that had been misfiled in the civilian archives, communications logs that should have been destroyed, testimony from soldiers who'd served under Arvana's command. And the more he read, the angrier he became, because it was all there, the truth they'd buried. When Arvana arrived the next evening, Elias had everything laid out on his desk: documents, data files, testimony records. She stopped in the doorway when she saw them. "What is this?" she asked quietly. "The truth." Elias gestured to the chair across from him. "Please, sit." She approached slowly, her eyes scanning the documents. He saw the moment she recognized them. Her face went pale. "Where did you get these?" "They were here all along, just hidden in the wrong section. Probably on purpose." He pulled up a particular file on his tablet. "This is a communication log from your second-in-command, the one who gave you that scar, 3 days before they attacked you." Arvana's hand went to her temple automatically. Elias read aloud. "The Empress is becoming a liability. Her emotional instability is affecting tactical decisions. She refused to authorize the strike on Kelly Station, despite intelligence confirming enemy presence. She claims too many civilians would be at risk. This level of weakness cannot be tolerated in wartime." "Stop," Arvana whispered. "There's more." Elias pulled up another file. "This is the actual intelligence report on Kelly Station. The one they showed you was falsified. There were no enemy combatants. It was a civilian refugee center. If you'd authorized that strike, I would have killed thousands of innocent people." Arvana's voice was hollow. "Exactly. You were right. And they tried to kill you for it." She stood abruptly, turning away from the desk. "You don't understand. I wasn't just refusing orders. I was falling apart. Every battle, every death. I felt all of it. The Crown made sure of that. I couldn't separate my pain from my duty anymore." "That's not instability," Elias said gently. "That's called having a conscience. In war, a conscience is a weakness." "No. In war, a conscience is what keeps you human." Arvana laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I'm not human." "You know what I mean?" She pressed her hands against her face. They were right to remove me. I couldn't command anymore. I couldn't make the hard choices. You made the hardest choice possible. You refused to become a monster. Elias stood and walked over to her. That's not weakness. That's strength they couldn't understand. Is that what you think? Her voice cracked. That I was strong? I think you were breaking under an impossible weight, and instead of helping you carry it, they tried to kill you for not being invincible. For a long moment she was silent. Then, slowly she lowered her hands. Her eyes were wet. My sister, she said quietly. Lysara. She died at Kellis Station. Before the siege, she was evacuating civilians when a building collapsed. Arvana's voice broke. They told me it was enemy action, that if we'd struck faster she'd still be alive. But that wasn't true, was it? Elias checked the files. His heart sank. No, he said softly. It was structural failure, old damage from a previous conflict, nothing to do with enemy activity. They lied to me. Tears spilled down her cheeks now, cutting tracks through the scars. They used my sister's death to manipulate me, to make me angrier, to make me more willing to hurt others. And when you still refused, they decided you were disposable. Arvana's knees buckled. Elias caught her, easing her down to sit on the floor. She didn't resist, just curled in on herself, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I thought, she gasped, I thought it was my fault, that I'd failed her, that I'd failed everyone. You didn't fail anyone. Elias sat beside her. They failed you. She cried then, really cried. 15 years of grief and guilt and rage pouring out in great shuddering waves. The library shook with it, books tumbling from shelves, but Elias didn't let go. He just sat there, one hand on her shoulder, and let her break. When the tears finally slowed, Arvana pulled back slightly, wiping at her face with trembling hands. I don't understand, she said hoarsely. Why does it hurt less when you're here? I don't know. Elias glanced at the files scattered around them. But I found something else in the archives. Research notes about the wave crown, about how it's designed. He pulled up a schematic on his tablet. It's not actually a weapon, it's an amplifier. But it needs an anchor, someone whose emotional state is stable enough to ground the resonance. Without an anchor, the crown amplifies everything chaotically. With one. He trailed off. With one? With one it can heal instead of destroy. Arvana stared at the schematic. Are you saying the crown needs someone to balance it? I'm saying you needed someone to balance you, and no one ever offered. She looked at him, and there was something raw and vulnerable in her expression. Is that what you think you are? My anchor? I don't know what I am, Elias admitted. But I know that when I'm near you, the library calms, your powers calm. And you, he met her eyes, you look less like you're drowning. You realize what you're suggesting. If the crown worked with an anchor, if I could actually control it again? She shook her head. The council would never allow it. They'd see you as a threat. They'd see us as a threat. They already do. Elias pulled out the notice from his pocket. They gave me 24 hours to stay away from you, or they'll exile me. Arvana's eyes widened. No, you can't. I'm not going anywhere. You don't understand what you're giving up. I understand perfectly. He smiled slightly. You know what the funny thing is? I've spent my whole life being invisible. Too quiet, too ordinary, too nothing. But with you, I actually feel like I matter, like maybe I was meant to be here. You matter, she said fiercely. You matter more than you know. Then let me help you. She closed her eyes. You deserve better than this, better than me. That's not your decision to make. Elias, Arvana, he took her hand. You've been carrying this alone for 15 years. Let me help you carry it, please. She opened her eyes, and the tears were back, but different now, not tears of grief, tears of something that might have been hope. "You're going to get hurt," she whispered. "Probably." He squeezed her hand gently. "But I'd rather get hurt standing with you than stay safe standing aside." The library hummed softly around them, and for the first time, Arvana allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to face the darkness alone anymore. The next morning, Arvana asked to see all of it, every file, every testimony, every piece of evidence that proved what had really happened. Elias tried to warn her. "You don't have to read this all at once. We can—" "I've been running from the truth for 15 years, she said quietly. "I need to face it." So he gave her everything. She read for hours, silent, methodical, her expression growing more and more hollow with each document. Elias worked nearby, cataloging artifacts but mostly just watching her, making sure she was okay, making sure she wasn't alone. When she reached the final file, the official order to eliminate her rather than allow her to continue refusing commands, something in her broke, not quietly, not gracefully. She stood up, and the tablet fell from her hands, clattering to the floor. "They wanted me dead," she whispered, "not contained, not removed. Dead." The library shuddered. "Arvana? They would have killed me if I hadn't run, and they would have told everyone it was necessary, that I was too dangerous to live." Her voice rose. "That I was the threat." The walls began to crack. "You need to breathe," Elias said, standing slowly. "Just breathe." "I can't." Her hands were shaking. "I can't breathe through this. I trusted them. I served them. I gave them everything, and they—" The ceiling exploded, not literally, but the energy that burst from her hit the stonework like a shockwave, sending fractures spiderwebbing across every surface. Glow lamps shattered. Shelves collapsed. Ancient texts tumbled through the air like snow. "Arvana, stop! I can't!" she screamed, and the sound carried physical force. Windows above them burst. "I can't control it anymore." Elias ran toward her instead of away. "What are you doing?" she shouted. "Get out! I'll kill you! No, you won't! You don't know that!" He reached her and wrapped his arms around her, pulling her against his chest. The energy exploded outward. It should have torn them both apart. Instead, it stopped. The shockwave froze in midair, suspended in a perfect sphere around them. Books hung motionless. Debris hovered like stars. The library held its breath. Arvana was shaking so hard she could barely stand. "How are you doing this?" "I'm not doing anything," Elias said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "You are." "That's not possible." "Apparently it is." The energy slowly dissipated, and the debris fell in a soft rain around them. Elias kept holding her until her trembling subsided enough that she could support herself. "You should have run," she whispered against his shoulder. "And miss this? Never. I could have killed you. But you didn't. Next time I might not be able to stop. Then we'll deal with next time when it comes." She pulled back to look at him, and there was anguish in her eyes. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you need someone to. That's not enough of a reason to risk your life. It's the only reason that matters." Above them, voices shouted. Footsteps thundered down the stairs. The other archivists were evacuating. In the distance, Elias could hear alarms. Tarvin appeared at the top of the stairs, flanked by 2 council officials in formal robes. "Evacuate immediately!" the senior librarian shouted. "The structure is unstable!" "I'm not leaving," Elias called back. "Don't be a fool, Dorn. She's going to bring the whole building down." "No, she's not." One of the council officials stepped forward. "By order of the High Council, the individual known as Arvana Kelthir is to be contained immediately. She poses a clear and present danger to—" "She poses a danger to you," Elias interrupted, "because she knows the truth now, and you can't hide behind lies anymore." The official's expression hardened. "You were given a choice. You chose poorly. Effective immediately, you are exiled from Irmora 7. You have 1 hour to leave the planet. Arvana gasped. No, you can't. It's done. The official looked at her with cold eyes. And as for you, Empress, you will either surrender peacefully or be subdued by force. Those are your only options. The library groaned around them, deep, resonant, angry. Arvana's eyes blazed. Get out of my sanctuary. This is not your... The library roared, a sound so deep and primal it made the stone itself vibrate. The officials stumbled. Tarvin grabbed the doorframe to keep from falling. It's not responding to me, Arvana said, her voice filled with wonder. It's responding to us. Elias looked around at the shifting walls, the vibrating floors. The library is protecting us? I think, she said slowly, it's been trying to tell us something this whole time, that we belong here, together. That's impossible, one of the officials sputtered. The library is a building. It doesn't choose. The stairs collapsed. Not all of them, just enough to cut off access to the subterranean level. The officials backed away from the edge, eyes wide. 1 hour? The lead official repeated, though his voice was significantly less confident. Then we're coming back with a military detachment. They fled. Tarvin lingered for a moment, looking at Elias with something that might have been regret. Then he too disappeared. Silence fell. Elias and Arvana stood alone in the wreckage of the archive. They're going to come back, Arvana said quietly, with weapons, with restraints. They'll take me by force. Not if we leave first. Where would we go? They control the spaceports, the transport stations, every exit off this planet. Then we don't leave the planet. We just hide better. There is nowhere on Irmora they won't eventually find us, Elias thought for a moment. Then he walked over to the locked drawer where he'd been keeping the wave crown. He pulled it out, still wrapped in cloth. What if we don't hide? He said slowly. What if we prove them wrong? Arvana stared at the crown. You want me to wear it. I want to try the anchor theory. If it works, if you can control it with me here, then they have no reason to fear you anymore. And if it doesn't work, then at least we tried. She took a step back. You don't understand what you're asking. The last time I wore that, I could feel every living thing within a kilometer. Their fear, their pain, their joy, all of it flooding into me at once. It's overwhelming. I'll be right here, Elias said. You won't be alone. You keep saying that, but I've been alone for so long. I don't know how to not be. Then maybe it's time to learn. He held out the crown. Arvana looked at it, then at him, then at the destroyed archive around them. If I do this, she said quietly, everything changes. There's no going back. I know. They'll see us as a threat. They'll do whatever it takes to separate us. Let them try. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and reached for the crown. The moment her fingers touched it, the metal began to glow, faint at first, then brighter, brighter. Elias felt heat radiating from it, felt pressure building in the air. The library hummed, then sang, then screamed. Arvana's eyes snapped open and they were blazing with light. It's waking up, she breathed. And for the first time in 15 years, the wave crown was active. The crown's light faded as quickly as it had flared. Arvana dropped it like it had burned her, stumbling backward. Elias caught her arm. What happened? He asked. Too much, she gasped. I felt everything. Everyone in the library, everyone in the district, everyone. She pressed her hands to her temples. I can't do this. Then we won't. Not yet. Elias carefully picked up the crown and wrapped it again. We need more time. Time is the one thing we don't have. She was right. Within the hour, voices echoed through the upper levels of the library. Footsteps, lots of them. But these weren't soldiers. Kessa appeared first, followed by a dozen other archivists. Some Elias knew well. Others he'd only seen in passing. All of them looked determined. "We had a vote," Kessa announced, slightly out of breath. "Unanimous. You're not going anywhere." Elias blinked. "What?" "The exile order. We're contesting it. The Archivists Guild has certain protections, and we're invoking all of them." She held up a data pad. "We filed a formal objection with the Council. They can't exile you without a full tribunal hearing, which takes a minimum of 10 days to convene." "You're buying us time," Arvana said softly. "We're doing what's right." Kessa looked at her directly. "You've been nothing but respectful since you arrived. You haven't hurt anyone. And from what we've seen, Elias is helping you. That doesn't deserve exile. That deserves support." An older archivist stepped forward. "We've also secured the subterranean levels. The library's board has granted us emergency discretion to limit access during structural assessment. No one gets down here without our permission." "Why are you doing this?" Arvana asked, her voice thick with disbelief. "Because this place is supposed to be a sanctuary," Kessa said simply, "and sanctuaries don't turn people away when they need help most." After the archivists left, Arvana sank down onto a repaired bench. "They're going to get in trouble for this. The Council won't tolerate defiance." "Maybe not," Elias said, sitting beside her. "But at least now you know you're not alone. We're not alone." "You should go," she said abruptly. "Take the protection they're offering and leave. Find somewhere safe. I'll surrender to the Council and— No, you don't understand. My culture doesn't work like yours. Humans, you help each other, you stand together, you believe in second chances. My people," she laughed bitterly, "we believe in order, in hierarchy, in proving your worth or being discarded. There's no place in that system for someone who's broken." "Then your culture is wrong." Arvana stared at him. "What?" "Your culture is wrong," Elias repeated, more firmly this time. "If it teaches you that vulnerability is weakness, that asking for help is failure, that breaking under impossible pressure means you're disposable, then it's wrong, and it needs to change." "You can't just say that." "Why not? It's true." He turned to face her fully. "You're one of the strongest people I've ever met. Not because you can level buildings or command armies. Because you survived 15 years of grief and guilt and isolation, and you're still trying, still hoping, still here. That's strength. Real strength. The Council won't see it that way. Then we make them see it." "How?" Elias looked at the wrapped crown. "We prove the anchor theory works. We show them that you're not dangerous when you have support. That control isn't about suppression. It's about balance." "You want to test the crown in front of the Council?" "Yes." "That's insane." "Probably, but it's also our only option." He met her eyes. "Unless you have a better idea." Arvana was silent for a long moment. Then, "What if I hurt you?" "You won't. You don't know that. I know that every time you felt overwhelmed, I've been here and you've calmed down. I know the library responds to us together differently than it responds to you alone. I know something is happening between us that neither of us fully understands, but it's working." He reached out and took her hand. "I trust you." "You shouldn't. Too late." She looked down at their joined hands. "If we do this and it works, they'll never let us separate. They'll see you as a tool, a way to control me. Then we make it clear that's not how this works, that I'm not your handler or your keeper. I'm your friend, your partner, your—" He trailed off, suddenly uncertain. "My anchor," she finished softly. "If you'll have me." She squeezed his hand, and tears spilled down her cheeks again. But these were different. Not grief, not pain. Hope. "I'm terrified," she whispered. "Me too. But you're still willing to try." "With you? Always." She pulled him into a hug, and he held her while she trembled against him. The library hummed softly around them, a sound like approval. When she finally pulled back, there was steel in her eyes alongside the tears. "If we're doing this," she said, "we do it right. No half measures, no apologies. We show them exactly what we're capable of together." "Agreed. And if it goes wrong?" "It won't. But if it does," she insisted, "you run. You don't try to save me. You get out and you live. Promise me." Elias looked at her for a long moment. Then he smiled. "I promise I'll do what I think is right in the moment." "That's not what I asked for." "I know, but it's what you're getting." She laughed despite herself. "You're impossible. And you're stuck with me. Apparently." 2 days later, a formal summons arrived. The High Council demanded a public demonstration. Arvana would wear the wave crown and prove she could maintain control, or she would be permanently exiled from Irmaran's space. The demonstration would take place in the Grand Archive Hall, in front of witnesses from every major institution on the planet. There would be no second chances, no appeals, pass or fail, control or chaos. Elias read the summons 3 times, his hands shaking slightly. "This is it," Arvana said quietly beside him. "Our one chance." "Then we'd better make it count." She took his hand. "Whatever happens, thank you. For seeing me, for believing in me, for giving me hope when I thought I'd lost it forever." "We're not done yet," Elias said. "We're just getting started." The library sang around them, and 2 days later, when they walked into the Grand Archive Hall together, it was to face either their salvation or their destruction. But they would face it together, and that somehow made all the difference. The Grand Archive Hall was built to hold 1,000 people. Today, it held twice that many. Council members in their formal robes occupied the elevated platforms. Guild representatives filled the center sections. Archivists, scholars, and curious citizens packed the remaining spaces. Every eye was on the small raised platform at the center of the room, where Arvana stood, pale and rigid, with the wave crown in her hands. Elias stood beside her, close enough to touch, but not touching. Not yet. The head counselor, an elderly woman named Thesara, rose from her seat. Her voice carried through the hall without amplification. "Arvana Kael'thir, you stand accused of abandoning your duty, of instability, and of posing a continued threat to the peace of Irmora 7. You have requested the opportunity to demonstrate control. We have granted this." She paused. "You have one chance. Succeed and your exile will be reconsidered. Fail, and you will be removed from this world permanently. Do you accept these terms?" Arvana's voice was steady. "I do." "Then proceed." The hall fell silent. Arvana looked down at the crown in her hands. Elias could see them trembling. "I can't do this," she whispered, so quietly only he could hear. "Yes, you can." "What if I hurt someone?" "You won't. You don't know that." "I believe in you," Elias said simply. "That has to be enough." She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and lifted the crown. The moment it touched her head, the hall exploded with light. Not metaphorically. Actual light burst from the crown, washing over everything in waves of golden energy. People gasped, some screamed. Council members scrambled backward. Arvana cried out, doubling over as if struck. "It's too much," she gasped. "I can feel everyone, all their fear, all their judgment, all their—" The energy spiked. Windows shattered. The walls groaned. "Arvana!" Elias said, reaching for her. "Don't touch me!" she shouted. "I'll hurt you!" "No, you won't!" He took her hand anyway. The explosion of energy froze mid-expansion. Then, slowly, impossibly, it began to recede. Not disappearing, transforming. The chaotic bursts became waves. The waves became patterns. The patterns became something that sounded almost like music. Arvana looked up at him, her eyes wide with shock. "How are you doing this?" "I'm not. We are," The energy continued to stabilize, forming a sphere of golden light around them. But this time, instead of feeling threatening, it felt warm, welcoming, safe. The hall had gone completely silent. Elias could feel it too now. Not the overwhelming flood Arvana described, but something gentler. Echoes of emotion from every person in the room. Their fear, yes, but also their hope, their curiosity, their slowly dawning wonder. "I can control it," Arvana breathed. "With you here, I can actually control it." "Then show them," Elias said. "Show them what you're really capable of." She straightened, still holding his hand, and the sphere of light expanded outward. This time, it didn't explode. It flowed. It washed over the assembled crowd in gentle waves, and everywhere it touched, something remarkable happened. People stopped being afraid. Not because the fear was suppressed, but because it was transformed. The energy of the crown didn't overwhelm emotion. It harmonized it. It took the discordant notes of anxiety and judgment and fear and wove them into something coherent. The entire hall began to resonate. The walls sang. The floor hummed. Every surface vibrated with a note so perfect it made people's eyes water. And then the energy did something no one expected. It formed shapes, memories made visible. Above Arvana's head, the light coalesced into the image of a woman. Tall, strong, with features similar to Arvana's, but softer, kinder. "Lisara," Arvana whispered. The image of her sister smiled. Then she reached out and the light-formed hand touched Arvana's cheek. Forgiveness, not spoken, not needed, just felt. Arvana broke. But not in the way she'd broken before. This was different. This was release. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry I couldn't save you." The image shook its head. The light pulsed with meaning. "Not your fault, never your fault. But I failed you." The image pointed at Elias, then back at Arvana, then to the crown. The message was clear. You didn't fail. You survived. You found another way. The image faded slowly, dissolving back into pure light. But the harmony remained. The entire hall was glowing now, every surface resonating in perfect synchronization. Not with chaos, not with destruction, with unity. Elias could feel it through their joined hands. The connection wasn't just between him and Arvana anymore. It was spreading, touching everyone present, showing them what true resonance felt like. Not control through force, connection through understanding. Counselor Thessera rose slowly from her seat, her expression stunned. This is impossible." "No," Arvana said, her voice carrying through the hall with perfect clarity. "It's just what I should have had all along. Someone who saw me as more than a weapon. Someone who believed I deserved help instead of judgment." She looked out at the assembly. "For 15 years, I thought I was broken. That my inability to command without feeling everything meant I was weak. But I was wrong. And you were wrong." Her grip on Elias's hand tightened. Strength isn't about suppressing emotion, it's about accepting it, honoring it, and having someone beside you who won't run when you need them most. The light pulsed with each word, carrying the meaning deeper than language could reach. "This is what the wave crown was always meant to do," she continued. "Not to amplify rage into destruction, but to amplify connection into healing. I couldn't do it alone. I needed an anchor. She looked at Elias. "I needed someone who saw me, really saw me, not as empress, not as warrior, just as Arvana. And someone who you allowed to see you," Elias added softly. "That took just as much courage." The harmonics shifted, deepened. The entire library structure was singing now, not just the hall. The sound carried through corridors, through archives, through the crystalline forests above. For the first time in recorded history, the abyssal library was singing with joy. Arvana slowly removed the crown. The light dimmed but didn't disappear. It lingered like warm sunlight, touching everything gently. She held the crown out to the council. I'm not asking for my title back. I'm not asking to command. I'm asking for the chance to help others who break under impossible weight, to show them that needing support isn't weakness, that healing is possible. Tessara looked at the crown, at Arvana, at Elias, at the still resonating hall. This changes everything, she said quietly. I know, Arvana replied. You realize what you're proposing, a human as anchor to an Irmaran empress. The cultural implications alone. I'm not proposing anything, Arvana interrupted. I'm telling you what already is. Elias isn't my keeper. He's not my controller. He's my partner, my friend, my... She paused, looking at him with something soft and vulnerable in her eyes. My anchor. Elias squeezed her hand. And you're mine. The council members looked at each other. The hall had gone quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet. Expectant. Hopeful. Finally, Tessara spoke. The exile order is rescinded, both of you. She looked around the hall. What we witnessed here today was not a demonstration of control through suppression. It was something far more valuable. Proof that our greatest strength lies not in standing alone, but in standing together. The hall erupted in sound, not chaos, approval. Arvana swayed slightly and Elias caught her. You did it, he murmured. We did it, she corrected. They stood there on the platform, holding each other while the hall celebrated around them. And for the first time in 15 years, Arvana felt like she'd finally come home. Not to a place, to a person, and that made all the difference. 3 months later, the Abyssal Library looked completely different. The subterranean levels had been renovated, the damaged sections rebuilt with resonant stone that amplified harmony rather than chaos. The archives had been reorganized, expanded, transformed. But the biggest change wasn't physical. It was the people who now walked those halls. Arvana stood at the entrance to what had once been a forgotten storage room and was now the archive of emotional resonance. Inside, a young Kellen warrior sat across from a human counselor, both of them wearing simplified versions of the wave crown, learning together how to process trauma through connection rather than suppression. How many requests did we get this week? Elias asked, coming to stand beside her with 2 cups of coffee. Their morning ritual. 47. Arvana took the cup gratefully. From 12 different species, word is spreading faster than we anticipated. People are desperate for this, Elias said, for proof that healing is possible. They're desperate for hope. She took a sip, then smiled. And apparently human coffee. He laughed. I've created a monster. You've created a sanctuary. She gestured to the halls around them. All of this, everything we're building, it started because you refused to let me hide. You weren't hiding, you were healing. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. Hiding is running away from yourself. Healing is running towards something better. He looked at her. You did the hard part. I just held your hand. You say that like it was simple. It was terrifying, he admitted. But it was also the easiest decision I've ever made. Arvana set down her cup and took his hand. The familiar warmth spread through both of them. They'd learned over the past 3 months that their connection wasn't unique to the wave crown. It was something deeper, a resonance of souls that transcended species or culture. The council officially recognized the anchor bond yesterday, she said quietly. They're calling it the Kelthir Accord. Any individual with psychoacoustic abilities can seek an anchor without fear of being labeled weak or dangerous. That's huge. It's revolutionary. She squeezed his hand. They've asked me to take a seat on the council, to help implement the new protocols. Elias went still. That's your throne back. Everything you gave up. Not everything. It's different this time. She turned to face him fully. I told them I would only accept if certain conditions were met. What conditions? That the position includes my anchor, that decisions are made through consensus rather than hierarchy, that emotional well-being is valued as highly as strategic thinking. She smiled. That breaks about 1,000 years of tradition. And they agreed? They saw what we accomplished in that hall. They can't deny the evidence anymore. Connection is stronger than control. Empathy is more powerful than authority. These are human concepts, Elias. You brought them here. You changed an entire culture by just being yourself. I was just trying to help you, Awesome, and in doing so, you helped all of us. She touched his cheek gently. That's what humans do, isn't it? You see someone in pain, and your first instinct is to reach out, not to fix them, not to use them, just to stand beside them and say, "You're not alone." That's what anyone should do, but not everyone does. My people didn't. We saw weakness and responded with elimination. We saw vulnerability and responded with exile. We saw breaking and responded with disposal. Her voice trembled slightly, until you showed us another way, a better way. Kessa appeared from around the corner, datapad in hand. Sorry to interrupt, but we have a delegation from the Merchant Consortium here. They're requesting a consultation about implementing anchor protocols in their fleet operations. I'll be right there, Arvana said. After Kessa left, Elias pulled Arvana close. You know what this means, right? You're going to be traveling, speaking to other worlds, teaching this method across the galaxy. We're going to be traveling, she corrected, if you'll come with me. Always, or even though you hate public speaking? Even though, he smiled, someone has to make sure you take coffee breaks. You've ruined me, she said affectionately. I used to be a fierce warrior empress. Now I can't function without morning coffee and your terrible jokes. My jokes aren't terrible. They're so bad the library physically groans when you tell them. That's the walls settling. That's the universe judging your puns. They laughed together, and the sound echoed through the halls with a warmth that made several passing scholars smile. Later that night, after the last consultation had ended and the archive had grown quiet, they stood together on the observation platform overlooking the crystalline forests. The bioluminescent trees glowed soft blue in the darkness, casting shifting patterns across the sky. I keep thinking about that first night, Arvana said, when you found the crown, when you offered it back to me without fear or expectation. I thought you were foolish. I was foolish. No, you were brave, braver than any soldier I ever commanded, because you chose kindness when caution would have been easier. You chose connection when distance would have been safer. She turned to look at him. You chose me when walking away would have made perfect sense. That was never actually a choice, Elias said. The moment I saw you, I knew I couldn't leave you alone in that darkness. It wasn't even conscious. It just was. Humans call that instinct. We call it foolishness. She smiled. I prefer your version. What do you call it now? She was quiet for a moment, then, love. Elias's breath caught. They danced around the word for weeks, but neither had said it. Not out loud, not like this. Yeah, he said softly. That too. She kissed him then, gentle and grateful and full of all the things they hadn't yet found words for. When they pulled apart, she was crying again. But these were good tears, happy tears. You gave me back myself, she whispered. I was so lost, Elias. So convinced I was irreparably broken. And you looked at all my jagged edges and said, you're not broken, you're just hurt, and hurt can heal. Ah, you were never broken, Elias said. You were just lost. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. Broken things can't be fixed. Lost things can be found. He wiped her tears away with his thumb. And I'm really good at finding things. She laughed through her tears. That's such a librarian answer. I'm such a librarian. You're such a human. That too. They stood there in the soft light of the bioluminescent forests, two souls from different worlds who'd found each other in the darkness and decided to build something new together. 6 months later, the first human-alien anchor pairs were operating successfully across 7 star systems. The Kyothir Accord had been adopted by 3 major governing bodies, and applications to the Abyssal Library's Emotional Resonance program had exceeded 10,000. The galaxy was changing, not through war or conquest or force, through connection, through empathy, through the simple, revolutionary act of standing beside someone and saying, "I see your pain, and I'm here." Humanity's gift to the stars wasn't technology or weapons or conquest. It was the stubborn, relentless, beautiful belief that no one should face their darkness alone. That asking for help wasn't weakness. It was the first step toward real strength. That sometimes the bravest thing you could do was admit you needed someone else. And that the greatest power in the universe wasn't the ability to destroy. It was the courage to heal. Together. Years later, when scholars studied the turning point in galactic history, the moment when the old ways of hierarchy and suppression began to give way to something kinder, they would point to a single event: a broken warrior empress and a quiet human librarian standing together in a hall filled with light, proving that sometimes the smallest acts of courage can change everything. And in the Abyssal Library, in a small archive office that still smelled of old books and coffee, a plaque was placed on the wall. It read, "Here 2 souls found each other in darkness and chose light. May all who enter remember, you are not alone. You never were. You never will be." Underneath, in Elias's handwriting, she was never broken, just waiting for someone brave enough to help her heal. And underneath that, in Arvana's elegant script, he was never ordinary, just waiting for someone who needed exactly what he had to give. The library hummed its approval, and somewhere in the vast and endless universe, another broken soul took a deep breath and reached out for help. Because now they knew healing was possible, connection was real, and humanity had shown them the way. In the end, Arvana and Elias didn't save a galaxy, they simply proved a quieter truth: that sometimes the strongest force in existence is the courage to let another person stand close enough to steady your shaking hands. Power reshapes worlds, yes, but connection reshapes people, and people are what worlds are made of. And now the question drifts to you, echoing softly like the Abyssal Library's hum. If someone saw the part of you you hide, would you let them stay? Where in your own life do you mistake breaking for being weak? And what changes if just once you reach out instead of retreating inward? If you stayed with us to this final breath of the story, write the word "Anchor" in the comments, so we know you're one of the rare humans who journeys all the way to the bottom of the library with us. Tell us your city too. It's our way of mapping where this strange little community of cosmic soft hearts is growing from. And hey, if this story made you feel something, even if it was just, "Oh no, I'm emotionally invested in a space librarian," hit subscribe, like, hype it up, share it with someone who might need a reminder that healing is possible, and catch the next video appearing on your screen. We'll be waiting at the next shelf of the universe.